Mummy's Hand, made 8 years after the original in the Silver Age of Horror, the 1940s. And like I mentioned last time, this is basically a reboot that has nothing to do with the original. We open in Cairo with this guy, Professor Andaheb, played by George Zuko, who you might know from either The Black Raven or The Mad Ghoul. He goes on this epic journey until he gets to a temple, inside of which is a job interview, and the old high priest wants him to be the new high priest. He tells him about the mummy Karis by using the hot tub to show the flashback from the first movie, re-edited and dubbed over. So it's still a princess, but Anaka who dies, and this high priest, named not Imhotep but Karis, is in love with her. Karis is played by Tom Taylor, who's more known for cowboy films. But like Imhotep, he steals from the temple to try and resurrect his love, but this time instead of a scroll, it's Tano leaves. But the sacred Tano leaves are a no-go, so the statue of Isis comes alive and calls the police. And yes, in the far shots, that is still Karloff. You can even still tell he's got the scroll from the first movie instead of the leaves. Like Imhotep, Karis is buried alive, but this time they also pulled out his tongue.
So the ears of the gods will not be assailed by his unholy curses.
So the mummy's curse is fucking literal. I guess Karis couldn't afford the swear jar in the afterlife. So they bury him in an unmarked tomb, and this time they only kill the slaves and not the soldiers. They also don't show the spears impaling the slaves, only in the far shots, no close-ups, because this is after the Hays Code, which basically prohibited everything. Well damn, they really should have killed the soldiers too, because the priest of Kanaka found Karis. And so his main job is going to take the Tano leaves and make some Tano tea for Karis. He needs a minimum of 3 leaves to keep his heart beating, but 9 makes him rise. But don't go any further than that. You would think this would be important, but it's not really.
Children of the night.
Okay, I get it. I called the first movie a ripoff of Dracula. You don't gotta actually do it, dude. I don't care if it's the alarm to feed Karis. Well, the job interview goes well, so the old high priest pieces out on this world. Meanwhile, in Cairo, this is Steve and Babe. Yes, really. The comedy duo are American archaeologists who aren't having too much luck with finding anything useful, but they have some market shenanigans, and they found a vase that might be promising. Babe is played by Wallace Ford, who seems inherently interesting because he's a British home child, aka an orphan that was sent to Canada to populate its territories, but he eventually moved to America and he enlisted in the US Cavalry during World War I. Meanwhile, in the Cairo Museum, we got this vase authenticized, and Doc says it might point the location to the Valley of the Seven Jackals, which might be where the tomb of Anaka is.
But where are you going to find this hill of the 7 jackasses?
Well, let's get a second opinion from Professor High Priest. It's clearly a fake, oops. Their pot might be smashed, but no matter what he says, they just know it's for real, so they're going to split the money 3 ways. But they already spent all their money they had on this pot, so they go to the bar and gamble. No matter how many times they got rejected, they have the permits to dig, they just don't got the money for the shovels to dig. So keep playing pick a card, with this guy, who, oh no, he's a magician, Silvani the Great. So Silvani ups the ante by if he wins pick a card, then Babe will buy everyone a drink. And well, it goes about as well as you could think. Silvani is played by South African actor Cecil Calloway, who was nominated for Best Actor in Luck of the Irish, the 1948 movie which has nothing to do with the Disney film, and ironically he played a character named Horace. As well as years later in the movie Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. The 3 bond over being from Brooklyn, and Silvani joins the team as their financier. Also, apparently Silvani's real name is Tim. He's got a daughter named Marta, played by Peggy Moran, who retired from acting in 1943 and lived until 2002. The high priest finds her and tells her that her dad is funding some scammers, but one bar fight and they confront him. He insures her, but she goes to make sure with a gun. She allows it as long as she can come along to be the serious one against these 3 idiots. Not a good sign when the first thing they find is a landslide. But some dynamite helps find a cave. But this isn't the princess, this is Karis. Well, it's not exactly what they were looking for, but hey, we found something, so it's probably nearby. Oh no, the howling.
What's that?
jackass.
Wouldn't mean a jackhole, would you?
What's the difference? They're first cousins.
Well, that's just science, you know.
They say a moon like that does things to you. Now, you take me, for instance. Give me a moon and...
You can have it.
Doc and Steve are going over Karis, and they're starting to understand him, and Tano leaves might just be clovers. So at least the ancient Egyptians knew how to defend themselves against the leprechaun. Steve has to calm down his workers who are panicking about the howling jackasses, but High Priest finds Doc and he tells him about Karis. Just check his pulse via his hand. He's alive. And yes, that's why this movie's called The Mummy's Hand. So High Priest gives him 9T, and after 42 minutes, Karis finally wakes up. So Karis squeezes Doc's hand and uses his other hand to strangle Doc to death. Apparently the filmmakers took the film and darked out Karis' eyes, like with paint, which sounds really hard to do. The guys hear the screaming and investigate. They're missing a mummy and they're down a Doc. But hey, they still have magic tricks to cheer them up. Plus, if we're here, then that means the princess's tomb is probably around the corner. So the High Priest realizes they're onto him and sends Karis out after them, strangling this guy and Sylvana and grabbing Marta. So the two have to chase after him, finding the exact location from one of the High Priest's spies that died on the way, in the huge tomb set. The High Priest wants Martha to be his immortal bride. Just needs to sip on that Tano, yo. They find Anaka's tomb is right behind Karis' sarcophagus, so Steve sneaks in, while Babe goes a long way around to find the main entrance.
I'll give you 3 to tell me where she is. I'm not kidding.
You wouldn't shoot an unarmed man in cold blood.
2?
You would leave it large, you monster.
Well, at least he's honest. Karis wants his 10T, but Steve has to stop him by blasting, but the mummy's bulletproof. Look at how much dust flies off Karis when he gets tackled by Steve. Babe finds his way in and blasts Karis when he's trying to drink, which causes him to drop it. Karis tries licking up the tea off the ground, so Steve beats him with the little stand that had the flame on it, cooking up the tea, and whoa, he goes up real good. Marta and Babe passes out from their experience, and the next day we are not buying another jar because we're going home, and Sylvana is alive. The end. Final body count? 17 or 19, because the mummy and even the High Priest will return next time. It's very different from the first movie, but it's enjoyable in its own way. It's less creepy and goes for a more action comedy feel. The characters are fun, and Babe and Steve, being a kind of Laurel and Hardy, do it well. The action's fun, very Indiana Jones inspiring. Honestly, this film feels a little more like the 99 film, even with it having Imhotep. Karis is an alright mummy. The makeup looks great, but making him into just a lackey of the High Priest feels a little disappointing that he's not the main threat. I don't know, maybe if he did get the 10 leaves and he started rebelling against the High Priest, it would have been more interesting. It's definitely not like a terrible movie, and at only an hour and 7 minutes, you can do far, far worse. It's pretty crazy to think that this movie is an hour and 7 minutes because most modern movies are really pushing for 3 hours to be normal. But hey, this is actually the longest of the Karis films. 5.5 out of 10. But let me know what you thought down below, as well as hitting the like button and the subscribe button if you're new.